Hello, hello, and welcome to the Brain Dump with Sandy Boone. This is our next episode, and I'm super glad that you're here with me today. And moving along with what we've been talking about, I would like to start out with this anchor idea of if insight were enough, the smartest and most self aware people wouldn't be struggling this much. So, I tend to surround myself with people that are smart and people that are self aware. And let me tell y'all, people are struggling. There is so much going on in the world today. And regardless of where you land with all of the division, we are all feeling it. So, one thing I want to point out here is that our self awareness does not equal nervous system capacity. You can understand your trauma, you can name your triggers, and you can still be dysregulated. Insight alone is not the same as regulation. So, when I first started learning somatic experiencing, and I think I've shared this before, one of the things that really struck me after finishing that training was I felt like my nervous system had been a neighbor that I had been living next to for 48 years and I'd never spoken to them. Suddenly, there was this awareness of what was going on within my body that I had never had before. And this isn't meant to shame you if that's the space that you're living in, because our dissociation and our lack of capacity or our response to lack of capacity is really about safety and our brain's idea of what is safe. And so, working with healers, I find that helpers are trained to observe, analyze, reflect, note it, and that our cognitive control is actually an adaptive strength. Like we have to be calm when those around us aren't. And so we've learned this, we've perfected this, and I suspect for many of us it is a survival skill out of childhood. Our override for function becomes a default survival strategy. And so we will look like we're doing just fine and we will act like we're doing just fine. But underneath the surface, we are so disconnected and so moving forward. That shame creeps in when our insight doesn't bring relief. So we can name what our triggers are, we can name where we're struggling, but then we feel some sort of way about ourselves whenever that doesn't bring us relief. And knowing better doesn't mean that your nervous system has more capacity. So, in this, it's important to realize that the nervous system responds to load, not insight. Chronic stress, trauma exposure, hormonal shifts, ADHD, autism, and inflammation all reduce capacity. When capacity drops, thinking and effort stop working. Again, we know the motions, right? And we go through those. And so we fall into this trap of trying harder. Coping skills become self pressure. Tools turn into performance. Constant self monitoring and self correction. Self awareness becomes another way to abandon the body. And I see this a lot in functional medicine work with my clients, with myself. You know, we want the next quick fix and we want that quick fix right now. And that's just not the way the body works. One of the concepts from somatic experiencing that has really been helpful to my clients and also to me is that the trauma happens when something is too fast and too much and too slow and not enough. And so when you're looking at those two very different spectrums, in our world today, we're willing to recognize the too fast, too much. We're not so willing to recognize the too slow, not enough. And so when we've constantly been in that space of too slow and not enough, we've learned to abandon our body and to abandon our needs. The awareness that we're having is not wrong. It's just incomplete on its own. What's missing is the safety, the capacity, and the support. You don't need more insight. You need conditions that allow your nervous system to exhale. And one of the things that I've found helpful in this with my clients in particular is asking them to consider the things that don't require that they do more. Again, typically, these people are overperformers. they can work in the pressure until they can't. So that's where things such as myofascial release can be super helpful. For me personally, that was a game changer. A colleague of mine says that the fascia is the place where the body meets the mind. And so if you've ever found yourself in a massage or in some sort of body work where you were overcome with emotion, that was your body's way of getting rid of that trauma or that struggle, and actually processing through it. So tap into those other resources that we have, such as massage or myofascial release or chiropractic care. It's really great when our bodies don't have to do all the work to get the benefit of healing. Again, we are so able to recognize what's going on. We can name it. We can name the emotion, but it's not just about naming it. It's about processing through it. And this is one of the things that I like about neurofeedback is it gives us the option to train our brain to increase the capacity. Heart math can do this, meditation can do this. And, you may find that that calm is horribly triggering, that we can get overwhelmed when there's lack of overwhelm, especially if that's the intense nervous system that we're used to contending with. So stopping and slowing down, which is exactly what we need, is too much. So titrate that a bit. Give yourself the space to slow down. Give yourself the space to pick back up when slowing down is uncomfortable. And again, this doesn't have to be picking back up like doing more work. It could be picking back up like doing exercise. We've got to increase the tolerance for the slowdown. And the majority of people that I work with don't have tolerance for the slowdown. It is a space that we have to learn how to manage that. So, if we're really focused on taking all the supplements or doing all the things to help heal our physical body, that creates a stress within itself. And we don't get healing in that sympathetic dominant state. So we have to calm down. We have to teach our body to tolerate the calm. Don't allow those tools to turn into performance. It's not, am I doing yoga right or am I meditating right? Just be curious. I love approaching new things with curiosity because it takes the judgment out of it. What might happen if, fill in the blank? What might happen if I notice that I'm overwhelmed? What might happen if I choose to take a break here and take a breath or take a nap? Curiosity and the mindset of experimentation, I have found that to be incredibly helpful in my space of slowing down. Again, the awareness isn't wrong, it's just incomplete on its own. I'd like for you to consider, and maybe this is a journal prompt, where have you been trying to think your way out of something that needs to support? When I first started with my body-based trainings, I would default to logic every time things got hard. And it didn't take me long to realize that thinking was much more comfortable for me. It was I would rather think than feel. And the reality is I still hang out in that space, but I've learned to tolerate the feeling a little more. That feels nice. That feels prickly. You know, it's okay just to notice. You don't have to have your brain on all the time. Also consider, what would it be like to stop asking what's wrong with me and actually thank your body and your brain for doing what it needed to do or what it perceived it needed to do to protect you. Friend, there's nothing wrong with you. You are wonderfully made. Your body is responding to what you have been absorbing, either what you've physically been absorbing, such as cold weather, when there's a hurricane that comes through and we lose our modern conveniences, or an ice storm. your body will go into survival mode. That's what it's designed to do. There's nothing wrong with you. We've just got to get the brain online to know that it's safe and that maybe these ridiculous acrobatics aren't necessary. I'm also curious about what signals your body's been sending that insight alone can't answer. And so I think about this with hunger, right? Like, certainly there are some days that we're hungrier than others. Maybe we've been more active, or maybe there's days that we're not as hungry, like we're fighting off a cold or some flu. And so, it doesn't really, insight in those situations doesn't really help. It's not something that we can utilize to, again, we don't need to make a judgment about it, right? Like, it can be helpful to know, but then what's the meaning of that, and what can we do to support ourselves? Because we need all the support that we can get in this day and time. So again, this isn't about effort. It's about understanding our limits without shame and knowing that our limits will change from day to day. One of the things that I know about myself is that I'm going to show up and I'm going to give 100% of what I have. Is my 100% today the same as yesterday? Probably not. Is it going to be the same tomorrow? Probably not. And that's okay because we're not robots, right? Like, we've just got to be as forgiving of ourselves as we are of others. The perfectionism runs deep, and it's hard to overcome that. But I believe you can do it with a little practice. And again, maybe you need help to do that. Maybe you need some massage. Maybe you need some myofascial release. Maybe you need acupuncture. That's another great one. Maybe you just need to go for a walk and notice the wildlife that's outside or notice the plants that are growing. And even in the winter when everything's dead and there's not a lot of color, we can notice the snow. We can notice the ice. We can notice the lack of trees or the lack of leaves on trees. Like, we can notice the surplus, we can notice the abundance, and know that that's just part of life. So until next time, you do not need to logic your way out of what you're feeling. Stop asking what's wrong with you and start recognizing your brain and your body as the amazing thing that it is. I'll see you next time.